The Senate building in beautiful lights. The door to the office opened and the secretary walked in. Senator, Prosecutor Kong is calling for you. Link him to me, said the senator. The prosecutor vacationing in the islands greeted Senator Pak relaxedly. Prosecutor Kong started from afar to ask how things were going with Pak, and he asked directly what he wanted. Rumor has it you're trying to pass some pretty dangerous legislation. Kong continued. Do you know that this will put us prosecutors in a very bad position, said Kong. Without thinking long, Senator Pak asked how much he wanted from him. The prosecutor threatened that this time the senator had crossed the line and they would soon see each other at the prosecutor's office, and that he would soon take the money the senator had sent earlier. Pak was silent and Kong hung up the phone. The young man next to him with a smile on his face praised the crook for a good job. The prosecutor, along with a smiling. The young man began to discuss the state of affairs. Kong was tense about the new bill from the senator. He must be crazy to pass this law. I've been following him for a reason. The bribery has also become unstable. While they were talking, a girl came up to them. She beckoned the prosecutor over to her and her girlfriend as suddenly in the sky above them something loomed and began to cast a huge shadow. The prosecutor, along with his student, also found themselves under the overhanging shadow. The senator slapped his palm on the table loudly. He asked his secretary how the new project was going. She immediately appeared behind his back and reported that the delivery of the applications would start tomorrow. Good, replied the senator coldly and began to leave his chair while the secretary stood in a bow. On the senator's palm was a strange scar in the shape of a cross. They came to a tapestry depicting two demons and the senator said, "Hurry up, we don't have much time." The secretary agreed obediently. "Oh my God," said the clerk hoarsely. All the military representatives looked at the screen confused. The chief asked if this could be a new kind of weapon and was told that no one had any idea what it was. They all watched in fear as most of the island had a palm print with a cross on it. What happened? It turned out to be the island where the prosecutor who threatened the senator was vacationing. Looks like someone from high school got punched in the nose. He punched him? My God. No way, chattered the crowd around them. And another boy stood there feeling the aftertaste of the blow. Now, said the exhaling boy, and the crowd tensed up. I'm a strong boy, said the smiling boy who had knocked out his opponent. When he said that, he threw everyone into a stupor and started walking away humming. It was 17-year-old Mori Jean. His combat stats were excellent. He had fought in 299 fights and only 2 of them were draws, the rest were won by him. Jean has never lost a fight. Why is he so good at fighting? It's simple, he learned Taekwondo from his grandfather who was his only relative. His grandfather praised him for all his successes. That's why he sees everything during the fight as if in slow motion and can dodge all the blows without even blinking. Even big guys like him fall with a single blow. He says cheerfully while the well-fed boy lies there in pain. Taekwondo is the pride of this nation and fully justifies its title of Olympic sport. Walking with the trophy, Jean kept saying, strong guy, I'm the strongest guy. As Mori was pacing through the park, someone called out to him and he turned around in surprise. It was a well-mannered long-haired blonde. In a proud bow he said, "Congratulations, you are honored to participate in the high school god competition." Jean was a very non-serious looking kid and just continued babbling with a smile, put out his fist, strong, I'm a strong guy. The blonde man continued to stand in a bow and introduced himself. He turned out to be the head of the committee of that competition. Jean froze for a while. While the head was trying to repeat the invitation, Jean interrupted him with a boo-boop. You studied the art of Taekwondo, right? You use boo-boop? The head was confused as to what he meant. There was tension between them. Jean said he had a black belt in Taekwondo and the head said he didn't know what kind of technique he meant. While the ringleader was saying that Jean was eligible to compete, the light motorized guy was already stomping off to do his business but was stopped by the phrase, "We will honor any request you make." Jean turned around and the blonde guy confidently started saying that Mori would get anything for winning, like money. And the guy said, "Okay, I'm outta here." As Mori Jean walked away humming his favorite song about strength, that white-haired head of the competition stared back and there was something not good in his gaze. Suddenly a fist flew past Jin's head as if with super speed. A trail of blood appeared on the guy's bill. "The rules are simple," said the head. And the blonde man began to explain that you can fight in any style. There are no restrictions on weapons. It is also obligatory to follow all safety rules. Let me repeat that again, persuasively continued the head. With those words, the head reached into his pocket and held out an envelope in front of the frozen Jin's face. You have been selected for the trial. Blood protruded from the wound on Mori's cheek, but he was smiling and the head didn't even look at him. The kid cheerfully pointed to a gash in the park that was formed by the impact force of the head of the competition. How did you do that? The head said he would tell what his strength was if Mori Jin entered the competition. It doesn't matter if you win. I don't care. Jin got into a fighting stance and said that if the head of the winners was his, he would participate. The head clarified if that was the way it was supposed to be. The kid only bothered. Cheer him up with a full-mouth smile. Come on, come on. And now Jin was already lying on the ground and in front of his eyes was an envelope with an invitation to participate in the competition. Jin rose slowly from the ground. The impact of the blow was on his cheek. He sat there with an absent look and then said quietly, I lost. The boy bowed his head and began to shake, still continuing to sit on the ground. High school god, huh? He raised his head and said seriously, I think it's time to get serious. He resolutely folded his hands in front of him and wriggled his fingers, bringing a smile back to his face. Jin stood up and started yelling merrily with an appeal to his grandfather that he had finally found a super strong opponent. Most likely his grandfather would have said he wanted to hear it in person. It's a letter inviting me to the competition was sent to Jeonrado, one of the provinces in Korea. And also to 2 provinces by the sea. That's also how the invitation was sent to China. His recipients were also in Spain and America. The recipients of the letter inviting them to the competition were also found in the France and the rest of the world. School. The teacher calls her name, Park Yoon-ji, that's how it's spelled in Korean. The kids in the class weren't really listening to her. Some of them were even sleeping. After class, the kids were discussing who would go to computer club. Seems like someone didn't even get enough sleep during class time. The kid who was sleeping came in for a part-time job. Turns out his name is Devi Khan. The boss asked the boy to take the finished order to the address. The kid went to the night city to do his job. It was already 11 p.m. on the clock. Han counted the customer at the cash register and politely but tiredly thanked him and added, come back. The store was closing and the boss thanked Devi for his work and the man said, see you tomorrow. He slept soundly on the bus on the way home. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. Someone slams the door in the hospital building. It was Devi. He came to visit someone before school and they met on the roof of the building. Are you doing well in school yet? The man in the hat asked. Devi asked how the man was feeling and he replied that everything was the same and they began to admire the view of the dawn that opened before them. The man asked if Devi was still working and he said that he could buy a car if he worked a little more, so the guy in the hat got mad and threatened him not to lie. Do you think I'm stupid? The guy in the hat continued, baby, see my hospital bill is going up, he said, still holding on to Devi's clothes. My condition is not so bad that you have to. Before he could finish, the guy in the hat started coughing horribly and he had to hardly to stop the coughing. Do you have any money? Do I need something to eat? The guy in the hat continued with a guilty smile. Devi said he had nothing. So he's already in the school cafeteria waiting in line for someone to take his order. Devi was on the go drinking the broth that was left over from the instant noodles. Suddenly the schoolboys began to turn their heads and stare with visible worry at the 3 who had entered the room. The 3 of them started walking past Devi, who was still savoring the broth from the noodles. One of them bumped into the guy and asked why he was eating here, watching the remnants of his food dripping down his clothes. Just as suddenly someone put a hand up to Devi's arm. It was a serious-looking young man, and he held out his hand looking straight into Devi's eyes and said, I'm sorry. Devi said he had to wash clothes anyway, so it was no big deal, and shook the guy's hand. The guy with a serious look still kept looking into Devi's eyes and asked what his name was. Devi naturally said his name and smiled. When the companionship was satisfied, the wide one turned to look at Devi unhappily. The crowd was filled with whispering and Devi Khan and his past. Is that the one from Mad Cow? That was the legendary duo. They won everything in Kanamon, and others said he couldn't be the man because he had lazy eyes. The guy with the serious eyes was silent. In the meantime, Devi at the store had received a $30 surcharge for the a good job this month and was happy about it. Just as suddenly someone entered the store. Devi in one voice with the manager said, Good afternoon, turning around. It was an old man in a suit and stylish glasses. He asked evasively with a friendly, How are you doing? This man was also from the committee of that high school god competition and said that Devi had already signed in as a student. The man in the suit started to say that there was no restriction on weapons in combat, but was interrupted. Davy interrupted him with the question, "Can you offer $100 million as a reward?" His eyes were full of seriousness. The man in the suit immediately turned and started to walk away. Davy thought they weren't going to give him a prize like that. The doors opened and a rush of air blew into Devi's face. The guy in the suit grabbed the handrail and said that Devi was asking for too little because they could even cure his friend if he won. Suddenly a man and gradually began to rise in the air. Devi ran out into the street. Now his face was no longer lazy, he was angry. How can you suggest such a thing? He watched as the contest representative climbed up the cable to the helicopter and away. The man said, "I'll be back soon, but until then." He was interrupted by the helicopter's engine starting up, which caused Devi to move and the storefront where he worked to shatter. Dewey covered his face with his hands as his combat instincts told him to. And when the helicopter left, he stayed, staring up at the night sky wondering what he should do. Walking through the city at night, the guy counted the money he'd made. Yes, he could pay his hospital bills this month, but he realized that he was too exhausted from his second job. Suddenly he found a letter of invitation in his pocket. He remembered the words of the competition representative that if he won they could cure his friend, but, who am I kidding, I can't win. With those words, he threw the letter away. He walked into the hospital and his friend was on a ventilator. It was unbearably painful for Devi to watch the horror of what was happening to his friend. He overheard a friend's sister being told at the counter that he had gotten worse today and that money was no longer enough. The woman was devastated by the news. He remembered his friend helping him after a fight with a smile on his face. "You have to have common sense, I told you to stay close to me." And now his friend is lying unconscious in a hospital bed with an oxygen mask on. "Get up. You were always last, so hurry up and wake up," spoke Devi through gritted teeth in the hallway in front of his friend's tents. It's the school canteen again and Devi is eating instant noodles the same way, and yesterday's red-headed wide Shadira again decided to push the kid while he eats. Devi's food ended up on his clothes again. The bully, smiling smugly, pretended to apologize and said, "Don't. Saw you," with his head held high. Devi was silent. He only said not to worry and no more reaction. The guys were also surprised that Devi didn't react to such blatant rudeness. Red noticed the envelope in Devi's jacket. Immediately snatching it up, he showed it to his buddy. "Look at this." And his friend lazily said it looked like Devi was working. "Whoa! What are you gonna do with that? You want to buy something? A gift for a girl? A motorcycle? An iPad? What else would you expect from the well-to-do? The children of their families." Red snapped, "That's why that bastard only eats ramen. He's saving up," one of his buddies said to look at Devi. He was very angry and Red said he'd pay him back. The bastard threw all that hard-earned money and it hit the floor in a puddle of ramen. "Well, it's a good thing you have all that useless money," the asshole threw one last taunt. Devi lost his temper in the same second and a moment later was standing in the middle of the three unconscious bodies. He half turned to greet the guy who met him yesterday. The one looked at him with the same earnest gaze as yesterday. He trembled and literally but yelled, "There you are, Devi Khan of Mad Cow." They immediately began to fight, showing such twists and turns that all the gawkers stood with their eyes and mouths open. Devi knocked him out as well, but his face was blank, no emotion. Just then the representative that came yesterday appeared behind him and Devi once again asked if they could fulfill any of his wishes if he won, and the man in the suit once again confirmed it. And Devi, unemotional but at the same time serious, said, "Then I will participate in the high school god." Some girl caught her foot on a pebble and fell. The guy in front turned around, "What's up with that?" And the girl turned out to be a cutie in a nice school uniform with a mini skirt, and the kid balked. After recovering from the intense emoting while the girl was embarrassed, the guy put up his hand and asked her to be careful. "Are you studying kendo just for looks?" The cute girl with glasses looked at the back of the tall guy's head and was embarrassed. "He's the best fighter in our school." They walked holding hands. It was warm spring outside and the cherry trees were in full bloom. The girl covered her flushed face with her hand. "I like him." Girls at school in the country with a cute girl began to talk to her with facts that she is strange because she is so smart and beautiful face and figure. The girl is in the top 100 in the country on standardized tests, but the guy's a beaten down brute who's only interested in fools, and now he's the best fighter in the neighborhood. While the guy was dealing with the one who ate his lunch, the girls all kept paying extra for the cutie because she's always falling for nice guys like the director of discipline or the judo captain, but this one, he's just not right for her. But the girl sat back and admired her boyfriend. Does she really like muscular and stupid freaks? She replied that strong guys are so handsome and smiled as sweetly as she could. The girls exhaled and surrendered he was not in the to help her. And after school, he also took her hand as they walked. They were both embarrassed to be walking like this. They really did look like a couple in love surrounded by blossoming sakura trees. Suddenly the guy stopped and someone was coming after them. He covered the girl and in front of them stood a whole crowd of bullies, led by the most obnoxious one. Aren't you two getting too close? Miho Seo and Muzikcho exchanged pleasantries and unpleasant glances. Miho Seo also looked at the enemy gang and everyone looked at him wiggling. Miho shouted to the girl behind him to leave quickly but she only clung to him tighter and then he shouted louder. Now, the girl was afraid of what might be about to start. Miho asked more affectionately that she leave now and the girl agreed. The ugly bully laughed, that's drama, and Miho told him to shut up getting ready to fight. The girl walked on trying not to look back. Miho yelled, come on. You assholes. And the girl started walking faster from the spot skirmishes. She started to run as fast as she could, but suddenly she hit someone with her forehead. When she opened her eyes, she was very scared. It was two tall and very disgruntled guys. Could it be that they were from the gang that attacked Miho? The girl stood and looked at them angrily. She stood there and all she could do was look at the three of them through her glasses. She was unprotected because her boyfriend was busy fighting. That's what they thought. Suddenly the fight in full swing was stopped by someone shouting, she freaks, and the group of attackers froze as if frozen. Miho looked at the battered guy from the group of attackers, but it didn't apply to him, he was coming from somewhere already in that condition. The battered man was scared and stretched out, monster. It was her, that sweet and fragile Miho girl, she was following that beaten up guy and was very angry. I think I failed again. She was standing with a wooden sword in one hand and suddenly she was holding an unconscious guy by the scruff of his neck and started to tell Miho why she had to worry about him while he was fighting with those 20 weaklings. Don't you have enough fortitude? The girl bellowed at her lover who was standing there bewildered by the situation. The three from Dongpa High School went on a rampage. They were the so-called vigilantes. They literally tore their clothes with anger and began to prepare to attack the girl. The girl on the other hand recited the name of her fighting style and rushed forward. All three of them froze at the pain of the wooden sword in this girl's hands. There you seemed to break from such fierce violence and she stood there as if nothing had happened. The girl remembered how her sick grandfather had been treated and he had said that if she wanted the Yu clan to rise up, she had to find a good seed. That good seed she thought was Miho, who was now standing there looking at his girlfriend. She turned away from him and said, this seed is an empty chestnut. These words really hurt Miho's dignity. She told the crowd of bullies that they were annoying her and now she was going to finish them off. Naturally they lost their temper and weren't even going to hold back in a fight with her. Now she's a sparring partner. She suddenly said that these guys were unworthy of her blade, the art of Woolgang sword of the Yu clan, first style swordless stiletto. All the minions were defeated and in a flash, she reaches over to whoever's doing this and grabs him by the neck. That can't be right, mumbled the ugly man angrily. She twisted his neck and exhaled heavily. She walked away from the battle site remembering her grandfather and realizing that there was no decent one here. Suddenly she felt someone's presence. She was named after Mirai Yushin, 25th master of the Woolgang sword art. Behind Mirai was a guy who couldn't dare to look at her. Into her eyes. He continued, you have been selected to participate in the high school god. The girl turned around and gave the man in the suit the cutest expression on her face, yeah. At that moment, Kendo genius Mirai, who was only 17, decided to enter the competition. She agreed only to revive Volgang's skillful swordsmanship. The three overgrown schoolboys still stood frozen in pain as if in a dance and wondered what was going on. Miho stood there broken-hearted and still not coming to his senses. Jean still couldn't get to his feet. The tall blonde man in the suit was standing nearby, grinning. You should be grateful, began Jean. The guy in the suit looked surprised. Getting up from his knees, Jean continued, I still haven't done my legwork, he smiled. Oh yeah, you know Taekwondo, said the guy in the suit mockingly. Jean said that his grandfather taught him to use his knowledge only against strong people and now he thinks this guy is a strong opponent so he should be careful. Jean looked directly at his opponent and took a step back. Jean with super speed kicked at the head of the competition but he stopped his foot right in front of his face. I'll take that as a yes. Looks like he broke something to Jean or Jean broke something to the blonde guy. And he's already made it back to the department. He stood in a respectful bow before the man behind the huge desk. We've finished sending out invitations to all participants and the man coldly replied that the blonde man could go. As the guy was walking out the supervisor said, what happened to your forearm? The blonde stopped. Did you get your arm broken by one of the contestants? The guy's arm was indeed injured and sore. OT replied briefly, yes, staring angrily ahead. His boss said only that it was interesting, and stopped talking. A flimsy old house. The sounds of Jean's very loud snoring completely occupied its entire space. Jean slept on the bare tatami, covered only by a thin blanket. He was awakened by a phone call. He lifted the blindfold from his eyes and looked at the screen of his phone. The guy yelled loudly. The kid seems to be very late for something, and a couple minutes later he was already running at the speed of light through the people on the streets of the city, so fast that the woman's skirt rose from the wind. He figured it'd be 30 stations to the arena. And with his strong legs and that bike, he'd get there in less than half an hour. Feet faster than a train. Shoulders stronger than metal. Suddenly, before his eyes, a thief on a motorcycle snatches a bag from his grandmother, which coincidentally contained money for her son's operation. A cliched turn of events that is necessary to test the hero's morality. Mori's mind began to think about how hard Grandma had worked to earn that money for her own son's surgery. Poor Grandma. The biker was already happy that he got some easy money when suddenly Mori started to say, "My family has always been poor and we could never eat outside the house like other people," and the thief looked angrily at the young man. Mori continued the story of his poor family, and while the thief was distracted, he began to speed away on his bike, humming a Korean lyric song. Many gawkers gathered around to watch the triumph of good over evil. The biker was scared of the way Mori was flying at him and started to flee from the scene of the crime, but the guy on the bike kept up and shouted to the asshole that he would give up. Here comes Mirai trying to get to the arena and asks a random passerby to help her get her bearings. Suddenly, the two men rush past them. Mori yelled for the asshole on the bike to stop and keep chasing him. Both of them were oblivious to their surroundings. Mirai's glasses flew off because of the two of them fighting, and she got really pissed off. "You assholes. I'll get you with this, Wolfgang's sword art, boomerang." With those words Mirai threw her sword at Mori. It flew wildly spinning and hit the rear tire of Mori's bike, and he went flying off like a sack. He went tumbling across the pavement with his bike. As he fell, she walked over and hit him on the head. "Barbarian racer, I caught you." Mori shouted, "Fool, I was trying to catch a thief." Mirai's face changed immediately. Is he telling the truth? She decided to help him as a way of apologizing and started twirling her wooden blade again while Mori got back on his bike and continued to chase after the thief. The thief was confused as to how they did it, since they had just been fighting and now they were reunited for retribution. The moral of this confrontation proves that the truth works. These two men rode the same bike to punish the bad guy on the bike. The motorcyclist slowed down at the corner and the two were about to catch up with him. Mirai helped to properly slow down the speeding Mori on the corner with her sword. She stabbed the wooden sword into the ground. This wooden sword can cut even the ground, no way. The biker swept through the intersection like the wind. Mirai decided to use her sword skills again. She literally cut through cars to prevent a collision and yelled, "Get back in there," to that asshole. The biker was scared shitless and decided to throw the money away. 3 other procrastinators swooped in and said, "Mine. No, it's mine. It's all mine." Mori was dumbfounded by what was happening and braked sharply. More and more gawkers came out onto the road to share the others. The money like children, and the biker ran forward laughing like an idiot. He caught up with Mirai. She was running after him with a sword in her hand. "It seems that's how he died." 17 Wolfgang sword art style, said the girl, and jumped up but was stopped by a road sign. She crashed her face into it. The thief on the motorcycle was already starting to enjoy the fact that no one else was chasing him, and suddenly someone shouted, "Look at this!" A fist flew straight at his chest. Devi stopped the asshole with one punch. "I finally caught up with you," said Devi as he left. That day, an eye-pleasing headline appeared in all the newspapers. The perpetrator was apprehended by the police. The grandmother was given her money back for her child's treatment, while a strange death mask remained on the sign by the roadside. "And what of those of yours whose powers are beyond human capacity? They have made it safely to the arena." The screen again shows a huge hand hitting the island. This picture was taken on April 8th. This is the island where the prosecutor was vacationing and was punished for corruption. The President of the United States, Ova Mazarip, said he saw a hand and turned to the military. "What do you think?" Someone was about to answer. Suddenly the alarm system started squealing, "Attention! Attention! Emergency protocol activated. Please evacuate immediately." Some of the guards were already unconscious and the rest of them started yelling for the president to leave because there's an intruder in the room. Somebody started yelling about how this place could be underground. That's 120 stories under the Pentagon. Did someone yell about how many trespassers broke in? Did you recognize them? And the shocked answer was one man. This person was already in the room, hello, and immediately had guns pointed at him and was ordered not to move. All of the guards in the room had their triggers ready and were waiting for the order to fire. In front of them stood a man in a suit with a cross-shaped scar on his palm. The president, hiding behind a chair, started to ask who was in front of them, Chinese? Japanese? The intruder said he was making all this commotion because of a very important message and evasively gave his name as Park Moo-jin, member of the National Assembly of the Republic of Korea. There is an institution in the city of Seoul, and if you go down one of its staircases you can enter a very interesting location. This is the arena for mixed martial arts fights. There were already a lot of people in the room who were surprised that this institution had such a place. All the tough guys who used fighting in any way were here. Somebody noticed a guy called Tiger from Yodongpo on Jisan who was the boss of his territory, and his one punch solved all problems. It was all thanks to the back muscles of steel that he had trained by wielding a sledgehammer. There was even a knight here, and as it turned out, everyone tried to avoid fighting him because of his bad temper. Suddenly, the one who was discussing everyone stopped his gaze on Mirai and wondered what such a rose was doing in such a vile place. Someone behind him mocked him. The jolly boy decided to tell the one who had fallen for Mirai's beauty that it was she who had recently beaten Minsky so badly that he had not recovered. Mirai heard this and put her wooden blade in front of the funny guy's head and ordered him to shut up. Those two immediately started to slowly back away. There were many fighters in this hall. Some just stood there and studied the space. Some were listening to music or chewing gum, and some were just reading. All of them were distinguished from the crowd by their seriousness and confidence. Mori, sitting on the floor, said to Devi while tying his shoes, "Do you think that 8 hours of sleep is not enough for health? I think you need at least 10 hours for a healthy mind and body." Devi looked down at the smiling boy. He agreed with the kid and gave him his hand. They introduced themselves to each other while Mori stood up and he thanked Devi in advance. In a separate room, the people gathered were being watched by those who had invited the fighters. This year's big turnout, all 5 were in costume and only the red-haired guy and the girl with the gathered blue hair seemed unfamiliar. A red-haired man with a scar halfway down his face asked the others, "Who do you think will win this contest?" The blonde guy said 41, he meant Mori-jin. The one who invited Devi snickered unhappily, "What, the one who broke the executive's arm?" "I'm going to kill myself," he added wryly, lighting a cigarette. The next instant the two men were on their way to meet each other to cool things down, but the white-haired man who invited Mirai to the contest said, "Both of you calm down." He looked at them sternly, "If you two fight like last time I won't keep quiet." The two stopped abruptly when they remembered who he had invited to the competition. Mirai was number 105 and she was a real monster. The boys backed away and the gray-haired man stood embarrassed. "She's really like that." The room was full of hips with someone behind the podium loudly saying, "Pay your attention here. As soon as you walked in here you all got a bracelet and an injection." No one seemed to be listening to the person behind the podium. The man in red glasses behind the podium said that the injections were made to give everyone the opportunity not to fear death during the battle. By the way, Mori sleeps well even under such conditions, but Devi is very moody. The man behind the podium also noticed the bracelets that were given to everyone. The interface of the bracelets was designed to synchronize with nanoparticles from injections to collect data on the physical state of the participants during the battle. There was the sound of the bracelets activating. The 3 familiar faces of our who's who reacted to those bracelets and the announcer's voice announced that instructions were complete. "I want everyone here to start fighting right now." An announcer with glasses shouted excitedly. The guys in the audience even got a little angry. "All of a sudden he tells us to fight?" It was anger and excitement. In the other room, there are 5 controllers. By invitation understood that this behavior of the announcer would make everyone present worry and panic. The red-haired man noticed that some were starting to react in a similar way, aggression. Indeed, a couple of guys started taking each other. "What are you looking at? You want to die?" They start threatening each other. And someone has already adopted a fighting stance and is waiting for an attack, fearfully searching for opponents in the crowd. The cross-haired man understood how they're gonna start fighting. They're gonna use their bracelets to figure out who's weaker or stronger. And someone has already found an opponent with a weaker physical level and started attacking. 2 other guys with level 5 and 4 physical strength appeared near the guy with level 5 physical strength, and together they fought back against the attacker. Since they were united, the red-haired man decided that they were unlikely to make it to the finals. While the fight was gaining momentum, it became clear, but not to everyone, that the information about the physical level is a clever psychological trick to get everyone to fight each other successfully. It is necessary that the strong seeks the strong and not endanger the weak. Only he who relies on his own strength without paying attention to such a small thing as the physical indicator of the opponent is worthy to reach the branch. Real guys like a real fight. A level 8 boxer was called out by someone. It was a guy who was listening to music before starting. Just go home if you're just going to stand there. Because of this taunt, the boxer attacked him. Unfortunately for the boxer, his opponent was also a level 8 fighter, but he used Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and grabbed him in a fighting hold. Your movements are too hasty. In the background, someone was running like a locomotive. It was a level 8 judo fighter. He had already managed to pound someone into the floor of the court. And someone was unlucky enough to run into a level 9 taiji fighter. This guy had a very overwhelming aura and his opponent was very scared. They started to fight, but the guy in the shirt was unlucky to dodge all the time and the level 9 fighter threw him to the floor with a punch. The guy in the tracksuit who was reading before the fight started was still reading, but he was swinging his bat masterfully. He was level 7 and with an unknown style, but at his feet there were already 5 unconscious guys lying at his feet. A guy with long hair and a ponytail who before the fight started was looking around attentively with his fists went for the man with the gun. He was so fast that the shooter couldn't aim. Don't move. This fast guy was skilled in Shaolin Kung Fu and was at level 8. He was only smiling in response to the shooter's attempts when suddenly his attention was caught by Mirai. She had level 9 and fighting style, Wolguan sword style. She had already managed to knock out a couple with her wooden sword. The Shaolin Kung Fu master licked his lips and thought Mirai was a great toy. He was about to deliver the "I'll make you crawl under my feet" punch. But it seems Mirai easily beat him to it. Ah no, it was Mori Jin. He grabbed the Kung Fu master by the brushes and said with a smile, "Gotcha." The attacker only had time to say, "What are you doing?" And he went down without of consciousness. It was Mirai who knocked him out. They stood back to back with Mori and she firmly said she didn't need help. She fought off another attacker with her sword and almost hit Mori. He managed to dodge and asked Mirai to be careful. They stared into each other's eyes for a few seconds. He's fast. Devi turned around lazily. A crowd of Deathwish people were already running at him. He sharply thrust his fist forward. His muscles bulged as the sleeve of his shirt ripped. Devi was level 9 and had a very interesting fighting style of cardio karate. From the shockwave of hitting the air, his attackers were knocked unconscious. 4 standout fighters met with a glance. 3 of them are guys who fight so much whose fighting is largely respected and a girl who before the start of the fight desired gum out of boredom. They finished the bouts with all comers. Devi and Mirai also successfully dealt with everyone and stood on their feet uninjured. The red-haired observer said that it was time to summarize the preliminaries. The blue-haired girl interrupted him by saying that there was one more contestant left, and one more? Sure, and heavy footsteps were heard. Someone was already waiting for another fight. The blue-haired woman continued, he was late because of the process he had to go through to get him here. The blue-haired woman added confidently that if we considered only his talents, he had the best chance of winning. He was a man with glassy eyes and really in a straitjacket of a psychiatric hospital. Everyone on their feet in the room didn't even think about moving. They sensed the danger coming from this man. The guy was 23 and was currently serving a sentence in a juvenile detention center in Seoul. He had a level 12 physical strength and was accidentally confronted by one of the standout fighters. The perpetrator immediately took a swift swing, with his foot grinning like a maniac. What's his style? Taekwondo. The fighter barely dodged that quick punch and the 23-year-old psycho said, "Oh, you dodged it. Strong, huh?" But no, that fighter didn't dodge. He was helped by Mori pulling away by his clothes. Danger. Danger. The fighter started making excuses that it was nothing, but Mori said he helped him to save him, not to be grateful. Not only that, he did it with a blindfold on. He justified his act by saying he just didn't like the late dude. He lifted the blindfold from one eye to look at this prison monster. Mori and the prisoner's eyes met. It seems this shackled psycho has chosen a victim. Mori's physical level was at level 6 and his fighting style was also Taekwondo. The prisoner stopped looking at Mori and walked by and said he was just a weakling. Well, Mori was surprised. That asshole came up to Mirai with, "What's a pretty girl like you doing here?" He blushed, and Mirai told him to back off. He seems strong, but he doesn't have the character to back it up. Mori watched as the jerk snatched Mirai's weapon with his foot and started yammering, "Ha, this weapon is more suited for male hands than female hands. But in the end, it's just a cheap wooden sword." Mirai got angry and with a serious look said, "Give the sword back," but the jerk and only yowled oh so fearfully. At that time, Mori just took the sword away from him. Mori looked at the arrogant freak and gave him a tongue lashing. The prisoner decided that Mori wanted to take him out for a fight. "That's the attention you want," and with those words he kicked the sword out of the guy's hands. The sword sliced Mori's cheek as he fell from the kick, and the prisoner immediately decided not to hold back and decided to hit Jean with all his strength. He kicked the guy and he flew off into the wall. The wall was cracked and held on by the sheer force of the impact. The psycho stood and smiled, but his smile was quickly wiped off his face when Mori caught Mirai's sword, smiling sincerely. "Look at that," laughing said Mori, twirling his sword. The guy in the straitjacket was starting to lose his temper at Mori's smile. Suddenly the two began to laugh at the top of their voices, but someone interrupted them. "Stop laughing," rumbled a voice behind the prisoner. The guys in the room tensed up. It was Mirai who lost her temper. "Unarmed tech," the girl said quietly and literally stabbed her hand into her back asshole. The next blow was a spinning kick in the air. But when Mirai's foot was at the psycho's temple, something went wrong. He turned around sharply. "Oh, panties. The dream likes you even more. Let's go on a date." Mirai from this turn of events abruptly stopped her punching and covered herself up, which pissed her off even more. That's when Mori came up. He just pulled down the asshole's pants while Mirai sat there wondering what to do. Holding the rod in his mouth, Mori hissed, "You'd look better in boxers," and the criminal said. He said, "It's what's on the inside that counts, not the outside. Do you want to see?" And they started laughing again. Mori refused and the prisoner put his pants back on without using his hands. I wonder how he did it. This all made Mirai very angry. Before he knew it, Mori saw the prisoner's slipper in front of his face. The boy barely had time to dodge, and the prisoner's foot hit the floor. Then he lunged forward, ready to strike hard. Mori flew back into the same wall again, and left the same amount of flying from his arrival. New cracks. After sliding to the floor and falling. The imprisoned fighter was surprised. The leg he hit was injured. The ankle was turning blue. Did he break his leg during the kick? Oh yeah, that's because Mori had time to cover Mirai's month. She was stunned at the way her sword was treated, and Devi read all of Mori's moves and ideas perfectly. Everyone in the audience started saying how amazing Mori is. Don't levels make sense, and only Devi knew everything. They only look at the damage. Mori's losing, he broke his ribs. And Gang's physique? He didn't even flinch from Mirai's 2 punches. And he didn't even use his hands. When kicking, you need your hands to keep your balance. How does this man have such speed and balance with his hands tied? Devi tried to think of everything about this prisoner's level 12 physical strength. Devi concluded that if this man took off his straitjacket, he would become even faster and stronger. The prisoner suddenly asked Mori his name. Mori said he'd tell you when he beat him. The 2 standout fighters in the background realized that things were just picking up as one of them beat passersby with a bat. Mori and the straitjacket guy suddenly seemed to ignite with the fire of battle and rushed at each other. The space around them seemed to deform because of their speed and strength. They jumped into the air and Mori seriously decided to use Mirai's sword. Suddenly the girl's voice, "Unarmed technique 1 style," rang out. The prisoner thought he had won, but the moment he saw it his eyes popped up on my forehead. Mirai grabbed Mori's neck in a death grip in a frenzy, and the kid was in complete shock at her setup to twist his head off. She took out 2 at a time and landed, wiping her precious wooden blade. And it's like Mori is dead. The prisoner was a little luckier and landed on his feet. What the hell is this? And in the other room, the one who invited Mirai to this competition was trembling. She really is a monster. The preliminaries have come to an end. Metropolitan area. 32 fighters made it through the qualifying rounds. Mori barely made it through because of Mirai's interference. As for the qualifying tournament, it will be 1-on-1. And we're back at the base of the defense establishment, the Pentagon. The President of America sits in his Kremlin and nervously asks, "Do you really expect me to believe that?" But the Korean representative insists it's all true. The atomic bomb has lost its weight as a weapon. It's nighttime on the city streets. Mirai strides confidently across the bridge, followed by Devi. The girl turned around with angry eyes. She started yelling at Mori, who was hiding behind Devi's broad back, "Why are you following me? Stop hiding behind him." Devi kept his cool while Mori laughed behind him. Mori was still squirming after Mirai snapped his neck and said his house was that way. The girl quickly admitted her mistake and came to her senses. But as soon as Mori started talking about compensation for the damage done to his poor neck, Mirai's anger flared up again. She gave a couple coins to Mori and angrily started stomping forward. Mori asked her to wait. He wanted to ask her why she was attacking him while he wanted to return the sword she lost in the battle, but Mirai wouldn't listen. She was without her glasses and she lost them in the morning because of Mori, who glared after the robber. I'm nearsighted, you know, and why are you even asking me for compensation for injury if I did it on the battleground where your life was safe? I'm stupid. Devi, during the heated arguments between the two of them, simply remembered how on the playground a nurse was treating the wounded with the very nanotechnology mentioned at the beginning of the preliminaries. There were a lot of cute nurses there who treated horrible injuries just by stretching out both hands in front of the wound. It was so easy and simple, and so Devi remembered his friend who was in the hospital in a serious condition. Someone in the darkness shouted, "Turn on the lights." The three of them covered their faces from the rays of the "In my face, I've finally found it. My little brother's enemy." The Gopnik was yelling something about his brother being that biker in Chapter 4 and that his gang was about to show the power of the riders. They all came at these three guys in a bunch. But they were defeated in the same minute. Running away, the instigator threw a lighter at the motorcycle and our three guys were covered with an explosion. "I avenged you, brother," laughed running away Gopnik. Mori was thrown back to Mirai by the blast and he unfortunately landed with his palm right on the girl's chest. Unhappy guy? Mirai was very embarrassed, but she didn't kill him. Her embarrassment was cut short when she saw her sword fall off the bridge and she immediately sprinted after it. She was stopped by Mori and told that from the bridge to fly to the ground about 10 meters, "Think before you do." She looked at the guy angrily and told him to get lost and leave her alone. Mori was at a loss to understand the situation. Why is Mirai so angry with him? He just wants to help her because he was raised that way by his honorable grandfather. Mirai left and walked away. She walked over to Devi and told him he'd better leave too. But Devi tried to draw her attention to Mori's wound that covered his entire back. "He's covering it with his jacket. He got it trying to protect you from the explosion and it seems to be very deep." Mirai stopped. "So what?" Devi didn't expect such a reaction. "Well, just like that," he said and walked towards Mori, leaving Mirai alone. Mirai walked down from the bridge and started looking for the sword in the river. She thought about Mori's question, why suddenly start caring about the sword now? And realized that he was right, because she really did treat the sword mediocrely, like slashing from the ground when she was helping a guy brake on a curve. She remembered her childhood of swinging a sword several thousand times until she was blue in the face. How at school the girls had offered to give her a manicure and she had refused, or they would see her calloused palms. Why decorate the nails on ugly hands like these? She shone the light on her right hand and saw the huge calluses. "Maybe I'm still mad at you, father." Her flashlight went down and she still couldn't find the sword in the water. What do we do next? She asked herself, standing knee-deep in the river. Suddenly something lit up near Mirai. It was cute Mori, who brought out a motorcycle light that he connected to the power supply. "Are you crying?" Mori wanted to help her again, but the girl had a northern temper. "Who said I needed help?" Mori wondered how hard it was to say thank you. And Mirai muttered that it was actually his fault. They both fell to the ground from exhaustion and Mirai said, "Should I give it up? Is this sword so important?" Mori asked and Mirai said that her father gave it to her on his deathbed. Mori was surprised at this news. Mirai said it's just an ordinary wooden sword if you ignore the fact that her father gave it to her. She's not very good with it, but it pisses her off when someone picks it up. "I feel empty when it's gone, you idiot," and Mori realized what the word mine meant to her. Mori said she didn't care when he was there, but when he was gone she felt empty. Mirai looked at her right hand. "Mine." She stood up and said she changed her mind. She said she'd find the sword and ordered Mori to stay close and awake. He tried to joke, "Maybe you're stronger without the sword." And the girl just told him to shut up, but with a smile. Devi came up to the guys and said he found these thugs on his way home. But no, he found their hideout and brought them here. Mirai and Mori said they'd start searching after a couple of hits on the leader of those fools. Well, with the help of the bandits, her sword was easily found. 3 days later, there was an official high school god match. All the participants and even the eliminated ones gathered to watch the matches. In the ring was Mirai and a man of level 6 physical strength. She battled him with a calm swing of her sword, moonlight sword style, and left the ring victorious. The next fight was won by Devi with his full-contact karate. His opponent was a guy who used the Korean martial art of Zen. And the next fight was won by Jean Mori. His opponent was lying on the floor of the ring in disgrace. Is cheating a victory? Even though he used Taekwondo, it was a weird win. Jean Mori in his Taekwondo used too many fast techniques that drew more and more attention to him. On the podium sat the perpetrator wide, spreading his legs. He also noticed that Mori was using some interesting punches. And Mori was out of the ring looking for the freak in slippers with his eyes. In the next round, that prisoner was fighting, and his name was gone. Mori assumed that they would fight in the semifinals when suddenly someone called out to him and he quickly moved his hands to find a suitable pose. With agility and pathos, a new opponent appeared in the arena, the echo of his shoes echoing around the room. Go Gumdo 9th level Tai Chi expressed his respect for his time with eagerness and sincerity. Mori was embarrassed by this deference, though he was excited by some of the extravagance of such behavior. But Gumdo said there was no need for embarrassment. Previously he had only been interested in the physical level of his opponent. And it didn't develop because of that. But that's changed today. It was his turn to step into the ring. Gang Mansuk was waiting for him to fight. Mori called out to him. He's strong. Be careful. Gumdo laughed. There is no fear in me except a single fear. Losing to an opponent I don't respect is what I truly fear, and with those words he slew his fist firmly in place. So, two people meet in the ring. Gumdo, Tai Chi, physical level 9. Opposing him is Mansuk, Taekwondo, physical level 12. The referee in the red glasses said with a smile, the fight will not be stopped until one of you is knocked out or surrenders. Nanotechnology won't let you die, so give it your best shot. Gumdo told Mansuku that he was really strong, but he deviated from the path of martial arts. Like I care, Mansuk replied. The guy also told Mansuk to take off his straitjacket or he'd have a hard time. We'll see, the prisoner replied. The men were ordered to disperse. Ready? Here we go, shouted the referee, and the two of them, in a split second, turned around to face each other. Gumdo crouched below Manguk's waist and seemed much faster than his opponent with his hands tied. It was the Tai Chi fighting style of the dragon staff strike, rabbit step. Gumdo struck directly at Manguku's solar plexus. In the next Tai Chi style strike of dragon horn, heavenly grog, Gumdo stood on his feet so hard that even the floor beneath him cracked and Manguk flew unconscious for a couple of seconds. He was brought to his senses by a flurry of punches from his opponent. Since it was another Tai Chi style rapid fire, 10,000 horse blows. All these blows came directly to Manguk's face and head. In the moment, Gumdo concentrated as hard as he could. He was ready to deliver a devastating blow. It was the Tai Chi fighting style of the Steel Mountain Demon. With that punch, he threw Manguk all the way into the stands. The referee announced that this was a great unexpected turn, and if the fighter gang does not return to the ring in 20 seconds he will be disqualified. Everyone in the stands were surprised and frightened by the power of Gumdo. He is incredibly strong and was able to throw Gon out of the ring and into the stands. The referee started counting seconds 20, 19, 18. Ghana was surrounded by spectators and he asked him to lift. 17, 16. Will he really be back in the ring? The spectators lifted him up and the referee started shouting, he's up. Despite all the stunning blows he seems unharmed. He's unbelievable. Endurance. Manguk stood to his feet and looked directly at Gumdo. Gumdo stood proudly in the ring and Manguk walked towards him slowly praising him, good, good, very good. As he climbed over the ropes, he gave Gumdo one last praise and accelerated toward him with a front kick. But by accident he was unsteady on his feet and began to fall. But he didn't fall down, he regrouped into an axe kick. What's going to happen to fighter Gon? His punch was blocked and Gumdo decided to quickly get away from his opponent so he couldn't get in close. He jumped away from him to the other side of the ring. Gon was able to block Gumdo's punch because he released his right hand and then said, it would be stupid to keep both hands tied now. Ganges was half as fast and strong now, and that was no good. He was already flying toward Gumdo with a grin and an arm out in front of him. He reached for his opponent's head at the speed of light. The observers who were watching the fighters were amazed at his technique. And Mori in the stands was still asleep in his blindfold. Gang grabbed Gumdo's hair and he grunted in pain. Is Taekwondo really allowed to use such dirty techniques? The blue-haired girl who had invited Gon to this competition realized that this style was not for sport but for survival in war. Gon dragged Gamdo down by the hair. "Peekaboo, I got you, boo!" He raised his foot above Gumdo's head and prepared to strike. Gon cheered. "He's crazy." The blue-haired girl went on listing all the horrors of military battles, eye-rolling, low blows, stabbings, and the red-haired boy was too surprised to say a word. Gamdo was preparing to take the inevitable blow. And Mori was still asleep in the bleachers. Republic of Korea, Congress. 2 military men holding a bound prisoner at gunpoint. It seems to be Gon's memories. The assassins infiltrated South Korea and only one of the 39 was captured alive. All the others were killed on the spot. The government decided to test the skills of a captured surviving hitman and brought him to battle with the fighters. It was 50 martial artists from different countries. Before the fight, his hands were untied for the fairness of the battle. He was ordered to fight one-on-one with every martial artist. And as a result, 45 wounded, 9 knocked out, 26 killed. There was only one prisoner on his feet. After the fight he was tied to a chair and tortured to find out how he defeated everyone, and the prisoner said only one: Taekwondo. Taekwondo was originally one branch of martial arts. Over time, it split into 2 types. The first kind was mainly used in South Korea as a sport, and the second kind was used in North Korea as a martial art of pain. The second type of Taekwondo also exists in South Korea. But the North Korean government decided to combine it with Russian and Chinese martial arts. Using advanced Russian technology, they analyzed Chinese Kung Fu, which is more than 1,000 years old. They also studied and added other martial arts such as grabs and throws. Then they extracted the strengths of each technique and integrated them into the Taekwondo system. The man who can harness this knowledge will become a killing machine. The techniques used in warfare, North Korean Taekwondo techniques, and in a nutshell, it's a North Korean Taekwondo company for killing an opponent quickly. Gon was already holding his opponent's body with one hand. The poor guy was bleeding out. Gon threw Gumdo to the other end of the ring and the guy asked why he was doing that. The fighter just laughed. "I didn't think you'd fall so easily, come on." Gumdo got angry and remembered his old teacher: "Anger can hide body strength, but if you rely on anger alone it will destroy you in the long run," spoke the calm voice of the grandfather in the guy's head. "Anger will give you a huge surge of strength, but afterward there will be a big and damaging rebound. Be angry, but don't act angrily. Be between good and evil, for there must always be harmony between them, my grandfather taught me in his memories." The teacher began to literally dance with the energy of his body. Be angry, but control that anger. Control your emotions. Find the center of your emotions. Use this emotion to strike at a certain point, and you will receive Tai Chi enlightenment. With these words, Grandpa put his palm on the tree and leaves fell from it. Gumdo's memories were interrupted by Gon. "What are you thinking about?" He was already right in front of the guy and said, "Hey, I'm here." Gumdo realized what was coming next, and the second Gon kicked him in the face, the guy spun around. He kept kicking him with his legs and absorbing the pain. Gamdo thought only of the anger inside and how he could use it. Gon was coming at him like a train, and hit him with his right hand right in the stomach. Gumdo flew back from the force of that blow. The center of my emotions, he still wanted to defeat Gon. Gon was again preparing to deliver a straight leg kick, but suddenly Gumdo opened become one with anger eyes. Something incredible began to happen. Gumdo incredibly just dodged the fighter's swift punch. Horn shot. The stroke of the 5 elements of Yin Yang. Gumbo has arrived at the balance his teacher once told him about. It's like he's glowing from within. But Gon was not so simple either, and he regrouped quickly, his leg burning with black flames. Gon suddenly said through laughter that he was tickled by Gumdo's so perfect punch, and the guy was defeated by those words. "How? What's that face? You Tai Chi lovers talk about yin yang and stuff, but it's just a shockwave," Gon said loudly, looking straight at his opponent. This style of fighting didn't seem to be to his liking. It was like a breeze, a light breeze. "Too bad, as soon as the shockwave catches up with me, all I have to do is jump back," the prisoner kept saying so that the guy would realize who he was really dealing with. "It's called the rebound of the northern wave." With those words, he glared menacingly at Gamdo, and with a smile on his face he delivered another crushing blow to the face, and Gamdo began to fall. That's why that time, Mirai remembered stabbing him in the back with an unarmed technique. "I didn't want to hurt you, so I didn't return it to you." Gon smiled at her from the ring and Mirai abruptly turned away in disgust at the creep. "Listen all. They who want to live should leave it now," shouted Gon standing in the middle of the ring. Everyone in the stands who were watching and most of the fighters were frightened by Gana's cruel words. Devi, however, was notable for being equally bored in the waiting for the next fight. Mori just keeps on sleeping in the stands in his blindfold. How did he even learn that style? The red-haired watcher asked in a low voice, while the girl who had invited the monster here remained meaningfully silent, looking at Gon through a screen in a remote observation room. 3 years ago. "Jian Suk 16 years old, you're just a wuss," shouted the frantically smiling young fighter back then. He was a common street thug, and dealt with problems the well-known way, fights to the death. But on the same day, he was ambushed and hospitalized for 30 weeks. While he was recovering, he disappeared from the hospital without a trace. No one saw him for a year, but one day. "Busan High School, it's time for revenge. It's time to trash the place." The Ghanaian was determined. He killed over 300 students that day. Without getting a scratch on his body. It was later discovered that he had studied North Korean Taekwondo for a year during his absence. Did he really spend a year studying it, the skill to kill only for revenge? The court sentenced him to detention. The defendant remained silent throughout the entire trial, stretched out the red-haired observer, and no one knows what was going on. The girl who invited Ghana to this competition said, "It's only a rumor, but they say he entered the school. And Harvey wounded 2/3 of the students. When he was in this rubber, this guy." She looked at Gon carefully. He really was a killing machine. "He's a monster?" He held Gumdo again with one hand and looking at him with a grin through his teeth. It was like a reckless predator on the rampage. Everyone in the stands was watching this match very closely with interest and dread, waiting for the end. Everyone started to slowly discuss who's going up against who in the next matches. And no one would want to face the monster Gun Mansuk in the ring. Who's the lucky guy who gets to face this psycho next? By the way, Mori was still asleep. Ben was the one with the headphones watching the massacre and the tablets with the next fights. He was having fun and was shaking with excitement, waiting for the next battles. He'd be fighting Mori and he really wanted to show his superiority. Gamdo clung to the remnants of his mind and began to scroll through the thoughts that he had failed his teacher. If only he had been stronger. Also remembered how he liked to tag along to battles. And when he grew up he realized that boxing without rules was not the power he was looking for anyway, and his attention was drawn to something truly beautiful. One day he saw an old man. Rascals. Laughed as the old man sipped his tea. He took out half of the well-trained men attacking him. Many were wounded, but the old man wasn't even tired. This is it. Gumdo thought on the way to school. This is what he'd been looking for so long. Someone who can hide his skills, yet be unstoppable when provoked. Oops, I'm gonna be late. The old man took the cart with the goods and went on his way. Gamdo asked the old man to be his teacher. Please guide me. Kneeling young boy bowing his head to the ground. What can I do? The old man smiled indulgently at him. But one day a fire started in the orphanage where the old man worked. No casualties. But the old man had to pay for the damages. The heart of violence. You can feel it, but you can't see it, thought the old man as he watched the ruins of the little one's house. He knew who had done it and who had enjoyed it. Just leave it as it is. The old man smiled. He ended up hospitalized from overwork. To pay the compensation. And Gamdo wanted justice with all his heart. We execute one wish of yourself. These words of the invitational made Gumdo participate in these competitions. I only have one wish. To find the bastards who did this to the teacher. And bring them to justice. Shouted Gumdo at the ruins of the orphanage. He was full of determination. But now Gumdo was beaten to the point of unconsciousness. Would he lose to a bastard like Gon? The fighter was getting ready to deliver the next blow to the guy's body. Come on, say it, laughed Gun. Please pardon me and let me go, lost himself over the boy's villain. Shut up. Gumdo bellowed, I have no intention of bowing my head to you. The boy continued without opening his eyes. He clung to consciousness, for his intentions were fixed on justice for the teacher. Gon punched the yearling in Gamdo's face. What? I didn't hear you this time. Speak up. The criminal said angrily. I will never bow down before someone like you. Spitting blood quietly said Gumdo. Gon remembered how he had once begged the man who had beaten him to stop and begged for mercy, sitting on his knees in front of the guy. I think that's when his psyche finally broke down. And he said, I told you to beg for mercy, and he looked with his empty eyes at the guy. He need him in the stomach. Don't you want to? He asked the guy who was trying to breathe. Everyone in the stands was shocked at how cold-blooded Gun is. Pray for mercy. Pray for mercy. He spoke loudly. He shows no mercy, folks. Suspected the audience of the judge with the red glasses. Gumdo had passed out, at least that's what it seemed to Gon. Gumdo held out his fist to Gon's face out of his last strength and said he would never beg for mercy for someone like him. Gon was flooded with memories of his weakness and his eyes lit up with hatred for the lad's strong character. Gon decided to have some fun and unleashed his other arm to finish the fight with Gumdo. He grabbed the boy's arms and twisted him behind his back. Try to fight back now, punk, laughed the monster. Gumdo was at a loss as to what the freak was going to do next. Now let's try it again, Kung Fu boy, shouted Gon. Gumdo couldn't move. He's in the clutches, the judge cheerfully informed the audience. Someone decided to get in the ring to these two. Hey, are the other fighters allowed in the ring? The referee in the red glasses was surprised. The referee said it was a violation of the rules to eliminate someone who got in the ring with them. Gon was so engrossed in hurting the guy that he wasn't paying attention to anything. Gumdo, unfortunately, couldn't break free of the hold. Gon began to twist Gumdo's arms even harder. He was about to break them. The boy screamed in pain and fear. Nanotechnology, though it keeps you from dying, doesn't protect you from pain. As suddenly something poked Gon's neck with a finger. It was Mori, smiling like always good-natured. Gon turned to him and he said it was his turn, still smiling. The people in the stands were shocked at this turn of events. Gon was angry and was about to hit Mori. But the boy was ahead of him and hit him hard in the face. The judge warmed up the audience with, "Ladies and gentlemen, did you see that?" Gon fell to the floor from the blow, and Mori stood looking at him, rubbing his fist. "You need to calm down. Get up, I didn't hit you that hard." With those words, the smile faded from the boy's face. Gon stood up and berated Mori. "Don't mess with me, you brat." He attacked Mori with determination. The boy stood still. Mori kicked Gon's face so hard his neck crunched. Well, Gon wasn't the only one who liked to fight with his legs. Gon passed out and Mori's face was as cold as ice. As Gon fell, he smashed his head on the floor of the ring. It was the shockwave he couldn't dodge. Everyone looked sharply at the banner with information about the fighters. Mori Jin's strength level was 13. He was 7 levels higher than the bracelet had indicated 3 days ago. Gon was still flying from Mori's punch. What the hell, frightenedly thought this maniac. His body was spinning frantically on its axis in flight. He even lost his slippers as if from a collision with a car at breakneck speed. He hit the floor of the ring a couple times and rebounded into the same wall that Mori hit twice 3 days ago. Even left the same trail of cracks and dents. The multitude of watchers and fighters in the stands broke into a cry of surprise at what they saw, and Devi and Mirai stared at their bracelets. Mori calmed down after the hit and his physicality was back to its previous level, and the scoreboard again showed the number 6. Mirai was surprised and thought, does Mori's strength level increase by using his legs in a fight? Mori stood surrounded by 4 inviting men. They put a hand to his neck in readiness to tear off his head. They stood silently around Mori and he too was silent. The people in the stands were surprised at the guards' levels. People didn't understand what that abbreviation with 100 next to it was, maybe a measure of intelligence? But their levels were 1 and so was their health. At least that's what it said. Participant number 41 Jean Mori. You are on probation until we disqualify you, said the referee as he entered the ring. Follow us closely. Mori thought the judge was blind. The guard with the glasses who invited Devi over yelled at him, "This is not a joke." His level even reached 13 for a moment. "Now I understand how he broke your arm," said the guard with the glasses. "What? Did that guy really hurt the referee?" The bleachers were filled with quiet whispers. "Well, let's look at why they're reacting the way they are. A lot of the people who are out there used to be street thugs. And when the judges approached them, most of them were not polite. Mori, on the other hand, was. Exceptions. They were the ones who didn't know how big the world was. That dude is a monster." The guard with glasses continued. "Huh? What?" The misunderstanding of the people on the podium was reaching a new level. "Oh, was that a secret? Sorry about that," he said finally, and went back to chewing his lollipop. Mori pointed his finger at the guard who had invited him. "I want a rematch," he said, smiling at the blonde man. "That's enough, number 41. Mori's arm was twisted by the girl with blue hair. I didn't touch him to do it. We can't stand your high-mindedness any longer, the guard added angrily. She's furious because she bet on a gone man Suk who lost with one hit. The red-haired guard spoke softly. He's afraid of her too. Mansuku had a dream of memories while he was out. 13 years ago, someone was fighting. It was two adults. It was probably his mom and dad. He was sitting there crying as a little boy. After the beating, little Gon saw his father asking for a reprieve from the bandits. He asked for at least one more day. And the boy realized one truth: freaks only feel strong with the weak. The kid's perspective changed. It's been 10 years. And now the teenager gang is standing at his feet with the gangsters kneeling at his feet. Oh, it seems that another gang has come to help them, and they're still threatening. Let me tell you something. I'll never bow down to anyone, so why don't you all just run back to your mommies? Said Mansuk sitting over unconscious bodies. The next memory was Kong beating Gon and he was already on his knees. And Gon was smiling and mocking the guy. Is that it? I was told you're strong and I came here from Busan and that's all I got? It wasn't fun. Gon dared to look into the monster's eyes and the monster yelled, "What are you looking at?" I hate eye contact, and lost his temper. He was reminded of his father's pleading, "We don't look at all alike." Gon gritted his teeth. Gon folded his hands in supplication and began to beg the monster's forgiveness. And now he was in the hospital. Gon went to the roof of the hospital to kill himself. He's still cursing his father, "I'm not like you. We're not the same." And he was approaching the edge. Suddenly he heard someone's voice. "Do you want power?" "What?" Gon turned around. Behind him, there was a guy with a backpack and he said, "Follow me and I'll give you the power to beat the rest of them." Infinite power was the last thing Mansuk heard that night. He disappeared and was not seen for another year.